It is an unfortunate situation when people who are in a marriage decide it's not working, decide to divorce. It's, I think, much worse if there are children involved. And I can only imagine if people were already in a bad place when the pandemic hit and the lockdown started and people having to quarantine with people they're not getting along with. And I can only imagine what that must have been like. Now, one of the things that's a part of separations and divorces is deciding who gets what. And a big thing you hear about all the time is don't leave the home. It's important to not leave. Don't give up the rights to the matrimonial home. What does that all mean? Is that an accurate thing? Joining us to talk about this is Laura Paris, associate lawyer at Shulman and Partners, LLP. Hi, Laura. Welcome back.
Hi, Barb. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. This is a really tough one. Is it fair to say that this general rule of don't be the one to leave the house is an accurate one?
So not really. There is some truth to it when you're talking about possessory rights over a home. But when it comes to any sort of interest in the equity in the property, like the actual monetary value of it, leaving the house does not preclude you from collecting on your 50% interest in the property.
But leaving the home could mean that you're then giving the other person possession of the home.
Exactly. So in family law, under the Family Law Act, a party is able to seek an order called exclusive possession. And essentially what that does is it irrespective of whether or not they have ownership, like legal ownership over a certain property, it gives them the ability to have possession of the property exclusive from the other party. And there are different factors that the court considers in granting something like that. So when someone voluntarily leaves the home, what that creates is a status quo, and it'll essentially beef up someone's argument should they so choose to proceed with seeking an order for exclusive possession of the home.
Laura, have you met with or talked to people who have left the home and didn't realize that that was the case?
Absolutely. There are many people who aren't very familiar with how this works. But at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world. You're not necessarily, giving up your rights by doing that. It's right. More in terms of combating against what, like I said, the status quo. So again, if you get proper legal representation and actually learn about what your rights are, you can quickly try and correct something like that with the right representation.
Can a decision to leave a matrimonial home affect that person's custody situation?
Not necessarily. I mean, there is certain case law which supports that the matrimonial home is something that you want to keep intact for the kids, for stability and consistency. But the reality is that the home is not going to make the parent. And if someone is able to show that they have a positive effect on their kids and that they're able to, kind of be the best parent they can be, and that maximum contact is what's best for the kids, whether or not you're continuing to live in the family residence isn't necessarily going to be kind of the nail in your coffin that you're not going to be able to, kind of claim that extra time with your kids or that custody over them.
If somebody comes to you, let me just give you a hypothetical situation. Somebody comes to you and says, things were not going well. The pandemic made it even worse. I don't want to stay in this relationship anymore. We've got kids. I don't know what to do. I can't stand it under the same roof. But I don't know if I should leave. What advice do you give that person? Is that too simple a question?
No, you know what, and that's a question that I get quite often, and something that we've seen actually probably one of the main questions that we've been asked during the pandemic, given the fact that, as you touched on briefly, people are they want to kill each other, being confined to their homes together during quarantine and et cetera. So it's certainly a question that we get quite often, and unfortunately there's no real simple answer to it. What I always tell people to consider is what's best for your kids. Is the environment at home toxic? And if it is, then that's probably not the best situation to have your kids in. So it's probably best for everybody that you move out. But in doing so, in making the decision to move out, Also, make sure that you're putting safeguards in place, that you're making it clear that the decision to move out is not you giving up your possessory rights, and that you're reserving your right to perhaps make a claim for exclusive possession at a future date.
If a couple go to court over something like this, can a court effectively kick one person out of the home?
Absolutely. They can, but there's factors that they have to look out. Now, like I said, the kids, like if there's kids involved, the best interest of the child usually is one of the primary considerations, but they also look at the availability of other accommodations. Like, are there other options available? Perhaps one party can be living in the basement and they can avoid each other that way. That doesn't necessarily mean that, they have to move out and find other suitable accommodations, because maybe the family can't afford that.
Does that ever work? People staying in the same residence, just having different rooms?
It does, and I'd say that that's probably the norm in a lot of circumstances.
Oh, really?
Most people, and it all really comes down to finances when you're considering a situation like that. And what you find is that the majority of people their main asset is their home. So until that house gets sold, no one has money to go anywhere else. And when you're talking about, kind of paying the mortgage at one place and then trying to pay rent at another place, well, you're talking about a serious cash flow situation. And those are usually the reasons why people end up trying to find a way to essentially live separate and apart, but under the same roof.
Laura, we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning a lot, because it's one of those things that for some reason people just don't seem to realize the effect on lifestyle and finances when you take one family and split it into two, right? It can be really shocking to people.
Absolutely. And again, kind of taking it back to the context of the pandemic, our inquiries have gone up at the firm since the quarantine started at about 40%. But in terms of, the people that are actually deciding to move forward with their separation, a lot of people are being discouraged from moving forward when they realize the financial realities of becoming divorced. And when you're looking at people who have been laid off during the pandemic or have suffered, financial losses from stocks or et cetera, a lot of those people are discouraged from even moving forward, because they're starting to look at, well, my financial reality, if I'm separated, is not going to be that great. So it might just be easier to, pay for some couples counseling and figure it out.
Wow. That's a really interesting point. And going back to the possession of the matrimonial home, I was reading about something called nesting, or a bird's nest order. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So in some circumstances where parties may have, the option to kind of like live with a family member, or they do have access to alternative accommodations. Maybe, for example, let's say the parties own their matrimonial home, but they also have an investment property. What they would do in that circumstance is the nesting arrangement essentially is that one party will stay at the home for 1 week. And then on the following week, they'll move into the investment property, and the other party will move into the home. So what you're doing is you're maintaining this stability for the children so that they don't have to be, moved back and forth between different residences. But you're also giving the parties an opportunity to start living separate lives and reducing the conflict in the home.
Just the thought of that all, it's so stressful when you think about kids and making sure that they are okay. How much of your work involves I don't know. It almost feels like there's got to be some kind of counseling element, or at least recommendations that people get help if they need it. Do you find that?
Absolutely. And the thing is, as lawyers, particularly working in family law, you have to respect that there's going to be some sort of kind of crossover when it comes to the legal issues and the issues of like the more personal issues. And I think that, we need to appreciate as lawyers what our limitations are, and that we're not expertise when it comes to child-related issues and psychology and things like that. But that said, as part of our job, in certain circumstances, we have to argue why things are better for the children than not. And that forces us to look out to, secondary sources and other literature, or reach out to other professionals, parenting coordinators, a psychologist, therapist, etc., to be able to get that information to understand what truly is in the best interest of these particular children.
How did you end up deciding to get into family law?
So interesting story. I actually decided to get into it from my parents' own divorce. I was very lucky in my situation that my parents' divorce was quite amicable, and I saw the position of the lawyer in that situation as kind of like a glorified position. I saw it as, this was someone that helped my parents figure out a way to be apart but still be the best parents they could be to me. And then that was something that I wanted to be able to do for someone else, because I know that it's hard for kids going through a divorce, and I felt like I had a really good situation, and I felt like I could use that experience and give advice to my clients based on what I've personally gone through.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. No, and I'm sure, you're talking to people and you can say, I've been through it myself, and that always helps.
Absolutely, and I think people respect you more when they feel like you understand where they're coming from, and that's why I do, and I don't know that all lawyers do, but I do try to put a couple of few personal elements into my file, because again, you're dealing with family issues, and these are personal issues, and to be impersonal about it, I think you're doing your clients a disservice.
Great stuff. Laura Pear, it's always great to have you. Thanks for this.
Thank you so much.
She's an associate lawyer at Shulman and Partners, LLP.